Okay, so now we need to build the section to place our modules, but there's a couple of bits and we need to fix up first. In this code, need to grab everything. Up until here, cut that out and paste it below. Let's also fix this indentation. Okay, it's better. And then on the second transform here, it should be y min and minus. And then finally, in this prepare buildings, we need to actually turn this on because we have an attribute coming from here that needs to be copied over. Okay. Okay. Now we need to put down, what's this, finish this cooking real quick. So you should see this, you should see holes in the mesh if you've got some modules plugged in, which I do. And these are just using default settings. Now let's put down a for each number. And the number is going to be, get an attribute promote. It's going to call this max, because we're going to get our maximum panel ID. So promote maximum, new name, don't delete the original. And then call that max. Let's just call it max ID. Over here, detail, look up that node, max ID 0. And then +1 because it starts counting at 0, whereas the iterations does not. See, should do 4. And the reason we don't just loop over points by the panel ID is because sometimes you might get a panel like ID, like say number 3 out of 4, has no points with that value on it. So it will skip an iteration and then we'll mess everything up. Cool. So let's put down a wrangle. Plug it into these two. This into the first one, metadata node into the second. So this one is going to isolate our points. So an int called iteration or iter, and get our current iteration of our loop. Here we go, if panel ID does not equal our current iteration, remove that point. So import 0 at ptnum. And then set our normal, so our n to v at panel direction, or dir, that's what we called it, panel dir. Okay, copy that, plug that into there. ISO panel, delete this last line. Now put down a split, and we want to go at panel ID equals 0 equals. And do a copy to points. Delete basically everything from there. Plug that in and select building ID, or type it in if it's not popping up. Make a second copy of that and plug it into the second output of the split, and this one goes into there, and this next one, or this first one, is going to be our base panel, which we'll make real quick. So that's just a grid. Switch it over to XY plane. This should match the direction of these. Let's open up our parameters and drag and drop module size onto the size of our grid. Rows and columns to 2. And then we just need to reverse it. UV unwrap. Layout, leave it as, scale stretch, and no spacing. So it should fill the entire UV tile. Okay. I'm just going to color this darker color, doesn't really matter too much. And then we just need a wrangle to set the panel ID to 0. That it really needs that, but and that copies onto there. Then these ones all get fused. Cool. And these ones, this should all be packed. You can turn it on pack an instance if you want. Shouldn't really make any difference. Now, merge these together. Okay, obviously something is not quite right. Yep. Spelling mistake there, and also here. Okay, cool. So it is correctly placing them. There's way too many with the default values, but that's alright. We can see that it's filling in all these gaps and instancing in all of these, and then putting these default ones in the spaces. Now what we need to do, copy this node here, turn off delete non-selected, change this color to 0.2 to match the one what I've got on there. Color these ones as well. Make sure they're all normaled. And merge it all together. Okay. Now last step, it's going to do an attribute promote. And that will be building ID to a primitive for each named primitive. And instead of name, building ID. And just put a pack in there. So you should pack up each building individually, and this will get Unreal to recognize them as individual buildings rather than one enormous mesh. Cool. So that is our system working. We can add more modules, we can change the weights of these. Let's put that way down, for example. And we can make it set to specific buildings, ignore buildings, include specific buildings. Let's say, for instance, we want this building here. Switch is the manual. And insert. This is also sort of in a priority order as well. So anything that's important, you want put it in first. So let's say select this window. We'll make it base weight of 1 so it always appears, and then this is building 81, 82. So we'll include that building. And then say on commercial buildings as well, but on every third one. Okay, so include building is not actually working, but you can see our commercial tag is, and every third commercial building is being assigned these windows. So let's check why that's not working. That'll likely be in the code in here. Okay, let's find our include. So let's check our naming. include building 1, include ID 1_1. Yep, that should be correct. And that also looks correct. Let me just debug this really quick. Okay, I know what was causing it. It's this little piece here where we're checking the building ID and if we should place it on that. That should be, if we cut that out, needs to be inside here. Because we only want to check this if we're not automatically including it. So that was just a little gap in the logic. There we go. So there's a lot more you can do with this, with all the settings that are available, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. That is it for this chapter. In the next chapter we will package these all up to go to Unreal Engine and also set up a basic scene. And look at using like how to actually use these in Unreal, and there's a couple of little tips and tricks for using it inside of Unreal as well, and just how Houdini Engine works.